First weekend of the VCT Americas Stage 1 playoffs has concluded, and we already have two teams that are going to VCT Masters Toronto. Sentinels and MIBR. Sentinels making their return to the international stage. They went to the last one. MIBR qualifying for their very first international as an organization. And to get to that point, there were some pretty interesting matches that happened along the way. Some disappointing results from teams that had hopeful group stages, C9 and Crew to be specific. The top dog of the region in G2 falling down to the lower bracket and almost getting eliminated. It has been an insane weekend. So we're here to talk about all 8 matches that have happened in the VCT Americas playoffs so far. There are timestamps for each match if you want to skip to the ones that you want me to talk about, but anyways, let's get right into it. So this is the board we have today. We have every single match that's happened so far. Apologies for this video being a little bit late. I'm about a day late on this video. I usually upload these recaps Monday, but I've had a very busy weekend, so I do apologize. But anyways, let's start with MIBR versus 100 Thieves. This was a matchup between two teams that did face each other earlier in the year. MIBR and 100 Thieves starting their kickoff brackets against one another. 100 Thieves did win that one pretty decisively, but MIBR are a much different team than they were back then. Getting a new player in Verno that has been a godsend for this team, and having their rookies have more development since kickoff. So it did end up being a pretty decisive 2-0 victory for that Brazilian team. Looking at map 1, we have split, this one being a 13-10 win for MIBR. This one's 100 Thieves map pick, them running the Sage comp that they've been running throughout the entire year, but this time it did not work for them. MIBR were in control for most of this map. Them starting off pretty strong with 4 round wins in a row, Verno and Cortesia being the leaders of their team. Ospas was also fragging pretty well as well, but also was missing some shots with the op. But Verno and Cortesia coming in clutch, especially on that attack side, to keep this team in the lead. Did end up being a 7-5 first half, and then MIBR didn't allow 100 Thieves to get more than 3 rounds in a row on their attack. 100 Thieves tried to bring it into overtime, but MIBR did not let that happen. Verno was leading his team in rating with 1.39, but Cortesia was leading the entire server with 21 kills on the Omen. Whereas for 100 Thieves, Asuna was the only one who went positive 18 kills for him. He was +3. Moving on, we have Icebox. This one was MIBR's pick, and they showed why. They've been very solid on this map since it came back into the map pool, and they dominated 100 Thieves on this one. Ospas missing a lot of shots in the first map, not so much on the second map. He did end up top fragging for his entire team, having a very strong defense side. Ended up being 9-3 at the half, MIBR winning that first pistol, 100 Thieves winning the second pistol, but 4 in a row from MIBR right after that happened would end this one pretty quickly. EU, the only one on 100 Thieves really looking like they were in form, 17 kills for him, he was +2. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of MIBR, we have Ospas who went 36, 21, and 9 for +15, and on the side of 100 Thieves, we have EU who went 28, 31, and 10, and he won 2 1v1s. So 100 Thieves got knocked down to the lower bracket. We know who they faced then, so I won't talk about them too much, but MIBR had a very strong showing, needing to get that rematch to continue in the bracket and be 1 game away from Toronto qualification. Moving on to the second opening match of playoffs, we have Sentinels versus C9. C9, a team that looked very strong during the group stage despite losing 2 games, both of those being very close games against G2 and MIBR, and a lot of people questioning Sentinels' skill set heading into this bracket. A lot of people saying that they hadn't been tested in quite some time. That was a concern of mine as well, but they ended up showing why they had such a good record. It wasn't just the fact that they played against teams that were lesser than them. They are a very solid team, and they showed why against the C9 that, man, just history continues to repeat itself. Looking at map 1, we have Ascent, this one being C9's pick. It was the first time Sentinels had played this map all split, and it kind of ended up being a secret weapon for them. They've looked incredible on this map in playoffs so far. C9 would win the pistol, but Sentinels stealing it right back. They were tied at 3, but then Sentinels ended up winning 5 rounds in a row to get to a 9-3 lead heading into the second half. Then they would start the second half by winning 3 in a row. They can end this one very quick, but then a quick 6 rounds in a row would make this one a bit closer for C9, but then around 22, this one was over. Second looked like he was turning back the clock to Madrid. He looked phenomenal this entire match. He had 24 kills on this map, hitting some insane shots like an op quick scope to clutch around. He was great. C9 were clearly nervous. Mitch was the only one who looked composed during this match. He had 23 kills on this map. C9 just not checking corners where they should, not looking nearly as good as they did in a group stage, which is something that we've seen from them time after time. Mitch basically being the only reason why this map ended up being kind of close. Then looking at map 2, this one being Sentinel's pick of Pearl, ended up being the exact same scoreline and ended up being a very similar story to what we saw in map 1. 9-3.5 for Sentinels, they won the pistol, Zekin got an ace, Celsius with some clutch rounds, also Bang getting an ace in there. Sentinels just seem to be reacting faster at this point in the game. Then C9 would start their attack half very strong to try to claw their way back in it, but it ends up just kind of making this one, again, look closer than it felt like when you were watching it. They got to 9 rounds at round 18, but Sentinels won 4 in a row to get this one over. C9 seemed to play well on the second half of both maps in this game, but they just had too big of a hill to climb in both maps. You cannot give Sentinels that easy of a lead, they will punish you for it. Bang and Zekin tying for the top rank here, 21 kills for both of them, both players looking incredible this match. Vic going positive this time, but only +1. 3 players were tied at 16 kills, that was Vic, Zeppa, and Oxy. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of Sentinels, we have Zekin who went 45, 32, and 9, and he had 2 1v2 clutches. And on the side of C9, we have Mitch who went 35, 32, and 10, and he had 4 separate clutches. He was looking really good, trying to drag this team to some kind of good result. So that would knock down C9 to the lower bracket. We'll talk about the match that they had there, but Sentinels starting their bracket off by proving the doubters wrong, and they would continue to do that as this playoff bracket went along. Moving on to the second day of playoffs, we have some lower bracket rounds to talk about, starting with 100 Thieves versus Energy. Energy, a team that barely scraped their way into playoffs, getting that win over Leviathan at the end of the group stage to be able to be here. However, the team that showed up during that match did not show up here. 100 Thieves were able to get a quick 2-0 victory over them. Not a lot of positives on Energy's side. 100 Thieves were clearly mad about their loss to MIBR and how their group stage has kind of been up and down, so they ended up getting that 2-0 victory without a lot of competition. Looking at map 1, we have Fracture, this one being 100 Thieves pick. 13-5 was the final scoreline. Decently even start to this match. Energy did actually have a lead of 4-3 at one point, but that would be the only lead that they had all map, as 100 Thieves were turning around and win 5 rounds in a row to end the first half, continuing that into winning the pistol and the second round. Energy will get 1 more, but 3 more rounds for 100 Thieves ended this one. Xander, a player who I've been looking to heat up, he had 28 kills on this one. He was +21. Very good performance from him. On the side of Energy, no one went positive. Mata had the most amount of kills with 14, but he was still -1, and Som with only 7 kills and -11. This guy looked amazing at the start of the group stage. He has been struggling as of late. Moving on to map 2, we have Haven. This one was Energy's pick, and it was closer for them, and they did have a pretty decent lead after the first half. Energy would win the pistol. It would be pretty back and forth, but 100 Thieves not able to get more than 1 round win in a row. 8-4 for Energy at the half, and then 100 Thieves would be able to win 5 in a row to take the lead. Energy would take it right back. They got to 11 rounds at round 21. They had 3 chances to get this one to 12, but they could not do it. Energy winning 3 in a row to end Energy's hopes of making it to Toronto. Xander continuing his strong play, just stomping down this team with 26 kills on the Omen. Arsenal with also a very strong map as well with 21 kills. On the side of Energy, Som did have a bounce back map. 20 kills for him, but Finesse still struggling, only 9 kills for the guy. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of 100 Thieves, gotta be Xander. He went 54, 20, and 14 for +34. Probably his best match in a 100 Thieves jersey. And on the side of Energy, not much good to go off of, but Mata went 32, 33, and 8 for -1. So Energy ended up being a pretty easy first round exit in these playoffs. Not exactly a very unexpected result. This team was looking pretty out of sorts through most of the group stage. There are a lot of question marks when it comes to this team. Will they end up making a roster change? There was of course word that they maybe wanted to drop FNS, but then probably Som and Ethan would have also wanted to be dropped if that was the case. But it seems like that group mentality has kind of shot this team in the foot. I obviously understand the respect that Finesse has and the fact that there are players that want to play with him, but at some point you have to make a decision that this team has to try to be competitive in some way. It just seems like FNS right now is just being outclassed both in terms of calling as well as individual performance. And while there are some good things happening with this Energy team, Mata being one of them, there's just not enough good to go around here. It's been pretty rough for them. I think them making playoffs was kind of just fool's gold, but we'll see how it goes for them in stage 2. Moving on to the second match of that day, we have EG versus C9. This was Ye finally getting his revenge on the team that did him dirty all the way back in 2023. EG, who looked pretty mediocre for a lot of their group stage, ended up having 2 very solid wins to end that group stage, but despite that, they still ended up being the lowest seed in their group. And of course, going up against C9, a team that has looked quite good. They definitely were not the favorites, but man, they dismantled C9. Closer second map than the first one, but EG just calling circles around C9 and playing with a lot more tenacity than C9 were able to muster. C9 yet again falling short in playoffs, didn't even win a single map during this entire bracket. This is why they weren't top 3 on my power rankings, just gonna say that. Looking at map 1, we have Fracture. This one being Evil Genius's pick, 13-9 was the final scoreline. EG would win that pistol with Ye immediately getting an ace on that pistol round. Hilarious way to start it, and was a, telltale sign for how the rest of this match went for that player. EG in control early. They ended up having a 7-1 lead at one point. It ended up being 8-4 at the half. So C9 playing a little bit better to end that first half, and then they parlay that into winning the pistol. Decent start to the defense side for C9, but then EG would establish dominance by winning 3 in a row. EG at map point, C9 get one more, but then a 3K from Ye in round 22 would end this one for C9. Vic having a decent map here, 21 kills for him on the Brimstone, the only one that went positive on his team. Whereas Ye, I've already stated, was on a revenge tour. He was out for blood during this match, 26 kills on Cypher for him, he was +9. Looking at map 2, we have Icebox. This one was closer, it did end up going into overtime, but just was not enough for C9. They did start strong by having an early 4-1 lead, but then EG crawled their way back, ended up being 7-5 at the half. Yet again, it looks like Mitch is the only player on C9 actually trying to get this team a win. That player having some pretty clutch plays, but then EG had a very strong defense side. Icy and Ye having phenomenal games, Icy getting some really nice clutches. Pretty back and forth on that defense side for EG. C9 would get to map point at round 22. They have 2 chances to win it. EG would stop it from happening. C9 even losing a 5-3 advantage on round 24. It should have been a lock for them to win that map, but EG won it. Then overtime ends up going to round 28. EG win this one off of, I think, Icy getting the final kill on that one, and this one is over. C9 are eliminated from playoffs yet again. Mitch, as I said, the only player on his team really trying to get a win. 25 kills for him. Oxy did match him with 25, but he was also -1. Ye, 27 kills, +9. Icy, 28 kills for +10. Hilarious scoreline. Looking at the team MVPs, gotta be Ye for EG, 53, 35, and 7 for +18. And on the side of C9, gotta be Mitch, 35, 31, and 24 for +4. So C9 yet again get knocked out of playoffs, the same exact story that has happened to them for the past 3 seasons. It doesn't seem to matter which players are on the team. It doesn't seem to matter how strong they look during the group stage. They always fail in these do or die situations. In my bracket, I actually gave them the benefit of the doubt, saying that they would not make it to Toronto, but at least make it top 4 in this bracket. I thought at the very least the curse will probably continue, but they'll at least get some improvement. That just was not the case. This team just continues to spin its wheels, and hey, maybe they make a roster change or something. I don't think they necessarily need to, but if history is going to repeat itself, as it has, then they're probably going to have a pretty poor stage 2. We'll see what ends up happening for that team, and for EG, this was exactly what they needed. A team that a lot of people are downing, some players looking for revenge arcs like Ye. He's looking a lot better lately, Icy as well. Those 2 players are starting to heat up, and that is exactly what this team needs to go on a miracle run. We'll get to their second match of the bracket later, but for now, we gotta move on. Which brings us to MIBR versus Crew. This one was a qualification for Toronto match. Whichever team winning this one would go to that second international of the year. Crew, a team that was at the top of their group. MIBR having the same exact record though, and this one ended up being pretty decisive for MIBR. This match was a rematch from the time that these 2 teams faced off in kickoff. That match going in the way of MIBR, and it would be the same exact story here. Crew getting outclassed on their best map of Icebox, both teams being very strong on that map, and MIBR just knew how to beat them. Looking at map 1, we have Lotus, this one being Crew's pick. It ended up being a 13-8 scoreline in favor of the Brazilians. Quick 2 rounds from MIBR to start the match. Crew answer with 2 of their own, but it ends up being 8-4 at the half. MIBR would win that second pistol, which put them in the driver's seat. 10-4 scoreline. Crew were able to muster up some rounds on their attack side, but this one ended up being over at round 21. Shy having a pretty good game for himself, 26 kills, +13, one of the main reasons why this wasn't an even more lopsided score. Whereas Ospos, the stats player himself, 20 kills for him, +7, he had a rating of 1.40. Moving on to map 2, we have Icebox. Already stated that both these teams are very good on this map. So with that being the case, you would think that this would end up being a very close map, but nope, MIBR kind of controlled them the entire time. Started the map by winning 5 rounds in a row. It would take until round 6 for Crew to get 2 in a row. Ended up being 9-3 at the half. Crew would respond by winning the pistol in the next round, but 4 was all MIBR needed, and they got it. Adverso being the top fragger for Crew at only 12 kills, so no one really fragged on that team. Whereas Artson would top frag for his team at 19 kills, and Ospos would lead his team in rating. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of MIBR, we have Ospos who went 37, 23, and 7 for +14. +14. And on the side of Crew, we have Shy, who went 33, 25, and 6 for +8. So Crew would get knocked down to the lower bracket from this matchup, kind of lost in the fact that C9 ended up failing. Crew ends up failing in these situations quite a bit as well. It's now been 2 years in a row where they had pretty solid stage 1s and then ended up failing in that playoff bracket. The difference between them and C9 is the fact that Crew does always end up making champs. They've been in every single one, so at least they make one international out of the year. But we'll talk about how the rest of the bracket went for them later. For MIBR, this was a huge accomplishment. They get that Masters Toronto qualification the first time this org has been to an international. It's going to be a big deal for those rookie players that have never been to one, as well as Artson, a player that's been around for a while and I don't think has qualified for an international before. So this is a big moment for this team, for this organization. We'll see how they do for the rest of the bracket. It'll be interesting to see if they end up winning the entire bracket. That would be a huge accomplishment as well, but we will see how that goes later. Moving on to the first match of the bracket that ended up being close, we have Sentinels upsetting G2. This was a rematch from the kickoff grand final. These two teams have not faced each other since that. G2, the obvious favorites for this matchup. They're the favorites in every single match that they've played in the Americas so far. However, Sentinels knew that people were doubting them, and when you doubt this team, especially in a playoff setting, it usually goes their way. Despite getting kind of smacked around on that map 1, Sentinels responded in a big way in maps 2 and 3. Very solid win from them. Incredible first half of map 3 to get them that win. This was one of the best games that Sentinels have played all year, and it came at the perfect moment against the best team in the entire region. But hey, now maybe it's Sentinels. Especially because it did not start that way. We start on Split. This one was Sentinels pick, a map that they have been very good on this year. And it ended up being a very lopsided win for G2. Sentinels would start it strong by winning the first 3 rounds in a row, but G2 would immediately respond with 6. Trent was hitting some insane shots while being very smart with the Tejo util. Only 1 round win on their attack side from Sentinels would end this one at round 18, 13-5. Trent leading the way for his team, 18 kills for him. It was tied with Valen though with 18 as well, but Trent was +13. On the side of Sentinels, no one went positive. Closest they got was Zekin with 13 kills and 13 deaths. So it looks like G2 should have this one in the bag. They are 1 map away from Toronto qualification. Did not end up going that way though. Icebox ended up being a 13-11 win for Sentinels, this one being G2's pick. G2 with a good start to map 2 by winning the pistol, but Sentinels went on an early streak. Ended up being tied at the end of the first half, then G2 win the pistol, winning both pistols of this map. However, that did not make Sen back down. They ended up getting a 4-round win streak from round 17 to round 20. Very cautious, very smart Valorant from both teams, no one wanting to make a mistake, but ended up going the way of Sentinels in round 24. Then we move on to Ascent with the game tied, and man, this was a weird map. Ended up being a 13-11 scoreline in favor of Sentinels, this being a map that G2 have looked very good on with their Waylay comp. And despite the very even scoreline, we had 2 very lopsided halves. Sen would start the map by winning the pistol, then G2 steal it and get 2 in a row, but then we had 9 round wins in a row from Sentinels to end the half. They would make that 10 by winning the second pistol, but then G2 steal it right back. G2 also getting 9 rounds in a row. Sentinels were 2 rounds away from winning this one for quite some time. However, Sentinels were able to get that late push in round 23 and round 24 to stop the comeback from happening and avoiding disaster and qualifying for Toronto. Trent has been G2's best player all playoffs. He had 20 kills on this map. Bang was leading the way for his team, coming up big in these big moments, 21 kills for him. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of Sentinels, we have Bang, who went 51, 44, and 20 for +7. And on the side of G2, we have Trent, who went 57, 37, 23 for +20. He was insane this match. It's a shame that G2 were not able to win it. So massive win from Sentinels, proving everybody wrong, taking down G2 for the first time in their region. This was G2's first loss in the Americas this year. It was only a matter of time that that streak was going to be broken. It is very difficult for teams to go on that long of a winning streak within their own region. Only a select few teams in the history of Valorant have been able to do it, and most of those teams were pre-franchising. So the fact that we're now in this franchise league, it's very hard to be that dominant for that long. G2 not looking as crisp in this playoff bracket as they have been throughout most of the year. They had a very scary second match of the bracket, but we'll get to that later. But for now, Sentinels are the second team to qualify for Toronto. Very impressive work from them. Moving on, we have the last 2 matches of the weekend, both being elimination matches, starting with Evil Geniuses versus Crew. This was a matchup that ended up going EG's way when they faced off in the group stage. That was seen as a pretty big upset, Crew looking quite strong heading into that match, EG not very much. But it seems like this is a matchup that EG are now probably going to be favored in anytime it happens for the rest of the year. Not only winning both matches, but 2-0ing Crew in the process. This match was a lot closer than the match that we saw with these two teams in the group stage, but this was a do or die situation, and EG ended up being the doers. Looking at map 1, we have Lotus, this one being very close, ended up going into overtime 14-12. This one being Evil Genius's pick. Crew would start strong by winning 4 rounds in a row, but EG would respond with 5. 7-5 in favor of Crew heading into the second half, and then Crew win the pistol. That should be a pretty nice win condition for them, but then EG would steal 2 rounds right away. Ended up being pretty back and forth with Crew getting to map point at round 21, but then 3 in a row from EG would tie it and head it into overtime. And then EG would get the only 2 rounds of overtime to be played. Kesnet leading the way for his team, +6 for him. He had 25 kills in the Neon. Icy looking fantastic yet again for EG with a rating of 1.37 and 23 kills. Moving on to map 2, we have Icebox. Again, a map that Crew has been quite good on, but in playoffs, not so much. EG would win the pistol, Crew get one at round 3, but then 5 rounds in a row would give EG a commanding lead here. A little bit of back and forth at the end of the half, but still ends up being 9-3 for Evil Geniuses. Crew's playoff lives on the line here. They would start the second half by winning 4 in a row. Starting to play some desperate Valorant, EG weren't able to find a ton during their defense half, but they were able to find just enough and end this one before Crew could bring it to overtime. Mazzino led the way for his team, 23 kills +5 for him, but Ye and Icy leading Evil Geniuses once again. Those 2 players are heating up. Do not count this team out. 22 kills for Ye, 21 kills for Icy. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of Evil Geniuses, we have Icy who went 44, 36, and 8 for +8. And on the side of Crew, Shy was the main bright spot for them, 44, 34, and 12 for +10. So a very disappointing end to playoffs for Crew. Yet again, they look good in the group stage and then they can't do it in playoffs. We'll see if they can do what they've always done and be able to make a late season run to get to champs. But for now, they kind of just have to sit and wait and dwell on how this stage could have been different. This is a team that did look very strong. They were the top team in their group, but playoffs are a whole different beast than the group stage, so we'll see how they recover from this in the later part of the season, and EG are looking so much better than they did at the start of the year. Very slow, very steady, but very important improvement from this team. Icy and Ye, 2 players that came into this roster to hopefully kind of bounce back their careers, and while it looked unlikely at times that was going to happen, it has been happening recently, and it came at the perfect time for this team. We'll see what they can do against the team that they're facing later in the bracket, but we'll get to that when it happens. Moving on, we have the last match we have to talk about. What a nail-biter this ended up being, G2 versus 100 Thieves. This one being an incredibly close match, again, despite G2 winning the first map very decisively. This one going very similarly to how G2's match against Sentinels went. However, 100 Thieves aren't really seen as a super top-tier team. They have had a pretty up-and-down season so far, so it was quite a surprise that this one ended up being not just close, but 100 Thieves almost won this one. Having a very commanding lead on map 3 at one point, this one could have been a disaster for G2. However, they ended up getting it done. They avoid disaster, they move on, but man, it has not come easy for G2. Looking at map 1, we have Haven, this one being 100 Thieves map pick, and G2 stomped them like they stomped Sentinels on map 1. 100 Thieves start the match well by winning the first pistol, but couldn't put together more than 1 round in a row. G2 in control for the majority of this match with Trent. G2 in control for the majority of this map with Trent leading the way for his team. Ended up being an 8-4 half, and then 5 rounds in a row for G2 would end this one before 100 Thieves could get a single round on their attack. Trent leading the server with 20 kills +15. Valen, a player who needed a bounce back from that Sentinels match, 19 kills for him. Whereas EU was the only one who went positive for 100 Thieves with 16 kills. And then we move on to Split, and this is where the craziness starts. Ended up being a 14-12 scoreline in favor of 100 Thieves. This one looked incredibly close. G2 almost won the whole match here, but did not happen. Especially with 100 Thieves comp on this one being pretty wacky and their performance on this map being pretty up and down. 100 Thieves started it strong by winning the first 4 rounds in a row, but G2 would take the lead right back by winning 5. 6-6 at the half, 100 Thieves win 4 in a round to make it 10-6. They get to 11 rounds at round 18. Looks like they can close this one out, but then 5 rounds in a row from G2. Now they're at match point. This one can be over. 100 Thieves get the one that they need and then win overtime. Just outplaying G2 in that overtime to get that victory. Giacomo leading the way for G2 with 22 kills. Xander leading the way for 100 Thieves with 18. Cryocell's top fragging for the whole server with 23. So pretty insane second map ends up going to a even more insane third map of of Pearl. This one was absolutely bonkers. G2 started it strong, had a 4-1 lead at one point. However, 100 Thieves just took the lead right back. This one ended up being so close, the teams just taking the lead from one another. 6-6 at the half, and then 100 Thieves looked like they could close this one out very quickly with a very solid start to their attack side by winning 5 in a row. It's 11-6. G2's impending demise was postponed because they ended up winning 5 rounds in a row to get this one a lot closer. However, 100 Thieves would still get a win at round 23. If they're at match point, they can close it out, especially off the back of Cryo getting a very nice 1v3 win to get their team to match point. However, G2 didn't let that happen in round 24, and this one went to overtime and was very back and forth. Both teams only winning on their attack side, and then G2 were able to finally get that defense side win at round 30 and just avoid just an absolute nail-biter of a match. Looking at the team MVPs, on the side of G2, we have Trent, who went 61, 40, and 23 for plus 21. He's easily been their best player of the entire playoff bracket. And outside of 100 Thieves, Cryocells almost matched those numbers. He had 61 kills as well, 56 deaths, 15 assists, and he was plus 5. So 100 Thieves ended up looking a lot better in this matchup than a lot of people would have given them credit for. They looked quite good this entire match aside from map 1. Ended up going toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the entire region, almost getting them out of the entire tournament. That would have been quite the surprise, quite the upset, but G2 had a very good second half comeback on map 3. Pearl is a map that G2 just always seems to have some insane games on, but they ended up getting it done. They avoid that disaster. They can still qualify for Toronto. They are facing off against EG, who they should be favored against, but EG have been the underdogs in this entire bracket, and that's a position that Evil Geniuses have been in before. So we'll see how that ends up going as well as the rest of this playoff bracket. Let me know what you guys thought of all these matches in the comment section down below. Please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.